When Lucas called, Emily lay beside me, one hand holding the phone to her ear, while the other gently caressed my face, lingering especially long on my tear mole. She didn't avoid me, and I could hear the man on the other end, his voice playful and coy.
Emily, I'll be back next Monday. You'll come to pick me up, won't you?
Emily raised her eyebrows and agreed without hesitation, her tone a mix of tenderness and indulgence.
Of course, Lucas. I wouldn't miss it for the world.
I tried to get her attention.
Emily.
She silenced me with a gesture, her gaze turning towards me, filled with irritation and a hint of disdain I had never seen before. I chuckled bitterly to myself. After hanging up, she continued to look at her phone, likely replying to his messages, her eyes crinkling with a bright smile. My heart clenched, a wave of bitterness washing over me.
Emily, my heart hurts.
If it hurts, go see a doctor. I'm not a doctor.
I was stunned, unable to believe those words came from her. My heart had always been weak, a condition I was born with. Fortunately, a few years ago, the Qin group found a suitable heart donor for me, allowing me to live until today. So, I always felt deeply indebted to Emily and the Qin family. In moments of passion, she would kiss my eyes repeatedly, swallowing my tears. One hand would rest on my shoulder, the other on my chest, leaving a kiss over my heart. I often wondered, if I had met Emily first, would she have fallen for me and only me? But now, 3 years of affection seemed like a ridiculous farce. After all, I was just a stand-in. Ever since Emily received that call from Lucas, she started coming home later and later, until eventually, she didn't come home at all.
Hopeful, she'll come home tonight. She has to. It's our 3-year anniversary.
I spent the entire day preparing many of Emily's favorite dishes. She had never missed any of our anniversaries before. From day to night, I waited, curled up on the couch, hugging myself tightly. I called Emily numerous times, but no one answered.
Hopeful, just one more call, just one more, and I'll give up.
Until the last call, which completely snapped the final thread of sanity in my mind. The call connected, and a strange man's voice answered.
Serious. What do you want?
His voice was hurried, and I could hear the sound of running water in the background. I didn't speak. The noise on the other end was chaotic, but I could still clearly make out Emily's voice.
Unsteady, can you focus a bit more?
Terrified, Emmy.
The call abruptly ended with a beep. My hand holding the phone fell weakly to my side, my face already streaked with tears.
Whispering. If I were to disappear, would Emily feel sorrow for me? Probably not. She already had a better choice.
From the beginning, I had anticipated this day might come when I got together with Emily. I just didn't expect it to come so soon. Emily had promised me that the beginning and the end would be my choice. But I wasn't willing to accept it. I needed to hear her personally declare my fate. The affection of 3 years now seemed like a ridiculous farce. I had merely been a stand-in. Thomas somehow got hold of my phone number and kept sending me photos of him and Emily together eating, shopping, watching movies, even entering hotels. I suddenly remembered how often Emily had traveled abroad for business over the past 3 years. Now it seemed she was probably going to see him.
Looking at the photos Thomas sent, my eyes reddened. He also sent several messages, essentially telling me to leave Emily voluntarily, saying she was only with me because I bore a slight resemblance to him.
I was unwilling to give up. I truly loved Emily. If given the choice between life and death, I would unhesitatingly choose life for her. But now, 3 years of affection seemed like a ridiculous farce. After all, I was just a stand-in. Thomas somehow got hold of my phone number and kept sending me photos of him and Emily together eating, shopping, watching movies, and even entering hotels. I suddenly remembered how often Emily had traveled abroad for business over the past 3 years. Now it seemed she was probably going to see him. Looking at the photos Thomas sent, my eyes reddened. He also sent a few messages, essentially telling me to leave Emily voluntarily, saying she was only with me because I bore a slight resemblance to him.
I'm unwilling to give up. I truly love Emily. If given the choice between life and death, I would unhesitatingly choose life for her.
I didn't refuse the plane ticket to France because Emily had once studied there. I hated to admit it, but I couldn't leave her. I felt like a wretched creature, surviving on the scraps of affection she threw my way. When the taxi dropped me off at the airport, I saw Emily's familiar car. Hadn't Lucas returned ahead of time? What was she doing here now? Did she distrust me so much? I unconsciously scratched the webbing between my thumb and forefinger but stopped abruptly. This habit had almost healed over the past 3 years with Emily's help.
Come on, show me your hands. Good job, love. You've been so good today.
Emily curbed this behavior, checking my hands every day and rewarding me if I behaved well. Only now did I realize that only Emily could cure my ailment. So now, I was beyond saving. I dragged my suitcase into the airport, checked in my luggage, and sat in the waiting area. Asking a staff member for a mask, I didn't want to run into her. But fate has its tricks. She wasn't there to see me off. She was there to pick someone up. I had never seen Lucas, so I couldn't recognize the man standing next to her. If it was him, we didn't look alike. His features were chiseled and upright, exuding an air of righteousness. His eyes, bright as stars, shone with steadiness and determination. He looked more like a cop than a student. Through the crowd, I saw Emily holding a bouquet, opening her arms to the man. They shared a brief, almost formal hug. Jealousy nearly drove me mad. But I didn't move. The plane started boarding. I put on a baseball cap and walked toward the gate. As I passed them, I glanced at the man, my eyes filled with sorrow and unwillingness. If we had any similarities, it was the conspicuous tear mole under our eyes, Emily's favorite.
Emily, I've missed you so much.
He took the flowers and smiled brightly at her, then glanced at me, raising an eyebrow as if to show off. I found it amusing. Did Emily really think I wouldn't give up? In this game, I was always the dispensable loser. I sincerely hoped she would be happy. With no more lingering attachments, I turned and boarded the flight to France. Thomas somehow got hold of my phone number and kept sending me photos of him and Emily together eating, shopping, watching movies, and even entering hotels.
Look at these, won't you? Emily's only with you because you bear a slight resemblance to me. Just leave her voluntarily.
I remembered how often Emily had traveled abroad for business over the past 3 years. Now it seemed she was probably going to see him. My eyes reddened. I was unwilling to give up. I truly loved Emily. If given the choice between life and death, I would unhesitatingly choose life for her. Coming back to my senses, I gently rubbed the ring, my eyes filled with unending sorrow. Life in France was indeed difficult, an unfamiliar environment, an unfamiliar language. Occasionally, as I walked the streets of Paris, people passed by one after another. I always tried to find a glimpse of Emily among them, even if it was just a fleeting resemblance. But there was none. The days were new, but the moonlight was old. I thought I might be unwell again.
Jack, I know a Chinese psychologist who might help you. Please, just give it a try.
I don't think a psychologist can cure a heartache, Grace.
Just go. It won't hurt to talk to someone, and it will ease my worries.
Unable to resist Grace's persistent persuasion and not wanting her to worry, I found some spare time to visit the hospital. Why spare time? Because I was genuinely busy during that period. I wanted to keep myself occupied, to avoid sinking into sadness. So I decided to find something to do in this foreign land. I planned to open a small bar. Only in the drunken nights could I use alcohol to see the lover I longed for in my dreams. This constantly reminded me that I was still alive.
Running a bar is much simpler compared to managing a company. I spent 3 years proving my capabilities to Emily. As a top student from the finance management department of a university, all I lacked was an opportunity and the trust of my superiors. Fortunately, I met Emily.
When we get married, I'll transfer the company to your name.
Foolish ruler, who would hand over their company to an outsider?
You were never an outsider.
I took it as a casual joke from Emily and didn't think much of it. We were once deeply in love, even if it was because of my face. Recalling the night we truly got together, amidst flowers and fireworks, I kissed her. It was an incredibly long kiss. I didn't dare to be forceful, only gently holding her delicate lips, my nose filled with her intense rose fragrance.
Emily, don't leave me.
Emily didn't answer, just gently wiped the tears from my face with her fingertips. In front of her, I could never hold back my tears. I saw the burning brilliance in her dark eyes, and I saw myself reflected in her gaze. I realized I had fallen hopelessly in love with her.
You're just a stand-in, Daniel. Emily's only with you because you look a bit like me.
Thomas had somehow gotten my phone number and kept sending me photos of him and Emily eating, shopping, at the movies, even entering hotels. It was a painful reminder of how often Emily had traveled abroad for business over the past 3 years. Now, it seemed clear she was likely meeting him.
Why? Why does it have to be like this?
My eyes reddened at the sight of these photos. Thomas's messages were essentially telling me to leave Emily voluntarily.
I love Emily too much to give up on her. If it came down to life and death, I'd choose life for her without a second thought.
Thomas somehow got hold of my phone number and began sending me photos of himself and Emily together eating, shopping, watching movies, even entering hotels.
Looking at the photos, eyes reddening, so this is what Emily's business trips were really about.
Thomas's messages urged me to leave Emily, claiming she was only with me because I bore a slight resemblance to him.
I can't give up on her. I love Emily too much. If given the choice between life and anything else, I would choose life for her.
In my original memory, my first meeting with Emily was in a private room at a bar. The room was crowded, with dazzling lights reflecting off glasses filled with Lafite wine. The mingling of drinks and the ambient hues dulled people's senses. Emily was among them, unaffected by the lavish atmosphere. She held a glass of wine, eyes closed, listening to someone singing on stage. I walked over, intending to gently place my drink on the table, but someone behind me accidentally nudged me. The clinking sound startled her. Fortunately, the glass didn't break. I breathed a sigh of relief. These bottles of wine cost more than several months of my salary. If they broke, I couldn't imagine the consequences.
What are you doing here?
She didn't use much force, but my body was too sensitive and fragile. Even a light touch would leave marks for a long time. When she let go, my body trembled slightly, and my wrist turned red. She seemed to be drunk, rubbing her forehead with her hand.
Sorry, she's had too much to drink. She probably mistook you for someone else.
I paused, said nothing, and just helped her sit steadily on the sofa. There were rumors that Emily had a deeply loved Lucas who went abroad for further studies a few years ago, causing their separation. Ignoring the others' gazes, I completed my actions and left the room, gently closing the door behind me. Leaning against the wall, I couldn't help but touch the spot where Emily had grabbed me, my eyes tinged with a hint of red from the alcohol. Emily had a familiar feeling about her. But no matter how hard I thought, I couldn't recall when I had met her before. It wasn't until now that I realized I had forgotten her. 3 years of affection now seemed like a ridiculous farce. After all, I was just a stand-in. 3 years of affection now seemed like a ridiculous farce. After all, I was just a stand-in. Thomas somehow got hold of my phone number and kept sending me photos of him and Emily together eating, shopping, watching movies, and even entering hotels. I suddenly remembered how often Emily had traveled abroad for business over the past 3 years. Now it seemed she was probably going to see him. Looking at the photos Thomas sent, my eyes reddened. He also sent a few messages, essentially telling me to leave Emily voluntarily, saying she was only with me because I bore a slight resemblance to him.
I won't give up. I truly love Emily. If given the choice between life and death, I would unhesitatingly choose life for her.
3 years of affection now seemed like a ridiculous farce. After all, I was just a stand-in. Thomas somehow got hold of my phone number and kept sending me photos of him and Emily together eating, shopping, watching movies, and even entering hotels. I suddenly remembered how often Emily had traveled abroad for business over the past 3 years. Now it seemed she was probably going to see him.
You should leave Emily voluntarily. She's only with you because you bear a slight resemblance to me.
Looking at the photos Thomas sent, my eyes reddened. I was unwilling to give up. I truly loved Emily. If given the choice between life and death, I would unhesitatingly choose life for her. Thomas somehow got hold of my phone number and kept sending me photos of him and Emily together eating, shopping, watching movies, and even entering hotels. I suddenly remembered how often Emily had traveled abroad for business over the past 3 years. Now it seemed she was probably going to see him. Looking at the photos Thomas sent, my eyes reddened. He also sent a few messages, essentially telling me to leave Emily voluntarily, saying she was only with me because I bore a slight resemblance to him.
I was unwilling to give up. I truly loved Emily. If given the choice between life and death, I would unhesitatingly choose life for her.
3 years of affection now felt like a ridiculous farce. After all, I was just a stand-in. Thomas somehow got hold of my phone number and kept sending me photos of him and Emily together eating, shopping, watching movies, and even entering hotels.
Look, Daniel. Emily's only with you because you bear a slight resemblance to me.
My eyes reddened as I looked at the photos. Memories of Emily traveling abroad for business flooded my mind. Now it seemed she was probably going to see him.
I can't give up. I truly love Emily. If given the choice between life and something else, I would unhesitatingly choose life for her.
The emotions of 3 years now seemed like a ridiculous farce. After all, I was just a stand-in.
Excited, surprised to hear from me, aren't you? Look at these photos, Emily and I eating, shopping, watching movies, and even entering hotels.
My eyes reddened as I looked through the photos. Memories of Emily's frequent business trips over the past 3 years flooded back. She had probably been meeting him.
Unfriendly, you should leave Emily voluntarily. She's only with you because you resemble me a bit.
Despite everything, I couldn't give up. I truly loved Emily. If faced with the choice between life and not being here, I would choose life for her every time.